Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're going to go into executive session to consider negotiations between the RSU 38 Board of Directors and the RSU 38 Marina Cook Area bus drivers pursuant to 1 MRSA 405-6D.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Should be there.
Is that one of those things? Yeah. I'll have to read the thing, but I can get it.
It is. It's impressive.
Ooh, Mr. Charlie. Yeah, I don't know where Brian went, but we'll just go
Are
ahead.
we missing?
Yeah.
It's not that far to walk
I
back.
know.
Did Brian get lost?
Mr. Charlie, escape. Oh, there he is. All right, call the meeting back to order. I'll look for a motion.
I move to ratify the negotiated agreement between the RSU 38 Marina Cook Area School Bus Drivers and the RSU 38 Board of Directors as negotiated for the period of September 1st, 2026 through August 31st, 2029.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in, yep, go ahead.
Two things. One, how would I now make a motion to amend that motion since?
For the bus drivers? That's for the bus driver contracts.
I apologize.
No, that's it, okay. No worries. Any discussion regarding the bus driver contract? All right, all those in favor? It is unanimous of all those present. Next up is citizens' comments not related to the budget, and I don't see anyone signed up, so we'll save the comments for the little later. Additions, adjustments to the agenda by the Board of Superintendent.
So I'd like to add 7A, consideration of out-of-state field trip for the high school math team.
All right. Anything else? All right, no one reached out, so we will add that. All right, we'll go to 7A then. Consideration of out-of-state field trip, high school math team. Motion.
I move to approve the out-of-state field trip for the Marina Cook High School math team students to attend the New England Championship on May 1st, 2026 in Canton, Mass.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Glad they get the opportunity to represent Marina Cooks in the New England Championship. All right, all those in favor? Unanimous of all those present. All right, now we're gonna move into budget workshop. Start with an update on the budget.
So you'll find in your packet that there's just a one-sheet budget update from draft 2 to draft 3. You'll see that the budget was reduced. We were able to reduce the Anthem. Originally, we had budgeted 15% on Anthem, and it came in at 7.28%. The dental, we budgeted 7%, came in at 3.67. And then also the CATSI allocation that was originally in there, we were able to take that out as there is no cost sharing this year for CATSI. They got a revised allocation on the ED 279 that is covering CATSI. So we were able to reduce by that. In addition, on the balance forward, the additional balance forward, that's part of the superintendent's agreements, was changed from 84,189 to 87,389, an increase of 3,209. So the new budget sits at 24,156,584. And also on that, you'll see the district total increase was 6.75%. We are now at 5.42%. Manchester went from 5.62 to 4.29. Mount Vernon, 10.63 down to 9.32, which is under the 10% that the board had wanted us at. Reedfield is 5.37 down to 3.96, and Wayne went from 6% down to 4.76%.
Any questions for Mandy, for the superintendent at this time? All right, seeing no questions, we will move to citizens' comments when it comes to budget-related items. Just want to remind folks that each person has 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes to talk. Have up to 20, there's 20 minutes allotted. Once we get to that 20 minutes, if the board wants, we can vote to extend that time. Remind folks that residents of the district go first, and then folks who are non-residents can speak after. And been pretty, also, there's no, questioning motives of a staff member or anything like that. Everyone needs to be respectful, please. All right, so thank you. And first up is John Harker.
As you know, I'm a farmer. We have to problem solve all the time. And I have a solution for your problem right now with the kindergartens. Take the $400,000 of the surplus funds from last year that you were going to put into the capital reserve fund and just put $200,000 of that in the fund this year and put the additional capital plans on hold for 1 year, just 1 year. Put the other $200,000 of those surplus funds and put them towards reinstating the kindergarten programs in Mount Vernon and Wayne this year. This would be a show of good faith that you are listening to your families in those towns who have big concerns, and this would allow you to do a much better job of evaluating the programs and the strategic planning process developed for this coming year. And citizens who are here tonight or online later who are concerned about your taxes going up, my suggestions do not increase this budget or your taxes this year because the funds come from the surplus from the previous years that sits in an unobligated balance. I repeat, this $200,000 comes from the surplus funds from previous years and will not increase the budget or taxes this year. And once the strategic planning process is done, then we can deal with next year's budget with a much better information to make informed decisions for the schools. And I request that Leslie, Dan, and Noah do the right thing tonight. And Sean, let me, I'm done, but I think there's a problem here. If you go to that second sheet, there was budget and non-budget related testimony, the second sheet.
Everyone on the non-budget scribbled their names out, so there was no names there.
Okay, then there's confusion because I think people were going to be non-budget related.
That's fine. The chair will use discretion and allow everyone to speak like we have at every.
Well, what I'm asking
board
is that you add another 20 minutes because that would have been the first set and this is the second set. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Stan Davis.
Hi, David has my comments. Retired educator, 2 terms on the CSD school board, many terms on the select board. My children graduated here. I co-chair the 4-town committee that wrote the consolidation agreement. The representatives from the small towns were clear that having a school in town is crucial for the viability of community. Without a school, the community loses young parents and becomes a haven for wealthy people from out of state who rarely come to their homes. We knew that consolidation would give the larger towns the votes to close our smaller schools, and all our representatives, large and small towns, agreed that that was vital, and we put extra language in, and the state approved it, to make it impossible to close our school without a vote in the town where the school was closed. The representatives from the larger towns wanted more favorable funding formulas, and that's one of the reasons why next year's Wayne taxpayers will pay 60% more per student than Reedfield taxpayers. Wayne's taxpayers have subsidized Reedfield schools continually since this agreement. The letter and the spirit of both of those agreements have been kept since the founding of the RSU. We did worry that the board would close the small schools gradually, peeling one grade at a time off and then saying, look how small the school is now, how can we keep this open? And then another. In moving the kindergarten, the board is taking a step in the direction of closing our small town schools. I urge board members to reverse your decision to move the kindergarten students. To show you that our community supports that request, I bring you 262 signatures, or 23% of the adult population of Wayne, which we collected through word of mouth in 4 days. I agree that meaningful and open-ended community discussions about the small schools are important. If the board and administration wish to have those discussions from a position of trust and cooperation, reversing this K decision will make that possible. I urge you to present a budget that Wayne voters will vote for. I ask a board member to move to amend the plan and budget for next year to keep kindergarten in Wayne. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Teresa Kirschner.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Kirchner, and I've served on the Wayne Local School Advisory Board for the last 15 years. I think most of you know that those committees were formed as part of the consolidation process, and as far as I know, Wayne is the community that's kept our local school advisory committee in place. The three of us are elected by the town, so we're town officials. We understand that we don't have any voting authority, but we do serve an advisory role to this board and are there to support our community. I appreciate that the RSU board is focused on the educational and emotional well-being of the district's children and teachers. I understand that you as a board and the A team are trying to address challenging budgetary and related demographic changes. The residents of Wayne are committed to discussing the future of Wayne Elementary School and our continued participation in the RSU. As a community, we need time to thoughtfully discuss the pros and cons of keeping our elementary school open, staying in the RSU, or pursuing a model similar to Fayette's. The RSU's vote to move the 2026-2027 Wayne Elementary School and Mount Vernon kindergarten classes to Reedfield and Manchester was made without notice, not to the parents, to the Wayne Elementary School Local School Advisory Committee, the Select Board, the Budget Committee, or our community. Due to this lack of communication, the Wayne Elementary School Advisory Committee formally requests that the RSU board delay this decision for a year. In doing so, we think you will foster greater trust in the community and open the door to more productive participation in your proposed 5-year planning process.
Thank you. Next up is Lilia Bottino.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lilia Bottino. I first want to thank the chair and the entire board for their service. I am a Mount Vernon parent, a resident, and a licensed clinical social worker. I'm here tonight to ask you, with urgency and respect, to reverse the decision to consolidate kindergarten programs across the district. This is not a minor adjustment. It is a decision with lasting consequences for very young children, for families, and for the future of our town. My son and daughter are expected to begin kindergarten and pre-K next year. At that age, children do not simply need a seat in a classroom. They need stability, connection, and a community where they are known. I worry about their deprivation of rest, movement, family time, and play due to long bus rides. Research consistently shows that early childhood experiences shape long-term academic, social, and emotional outcomes. We should be protecting that foundation, not destabilizing it. I urge you to consider the well-being of my children and our community's children, and consider the lasting adverse effect that taking away our local school potentially will have on our lives. As a Mount Vernon resident, I also need to say clearly, when a town loses its connection to its local school, it loses more than convenience. It loses a gathering place, a source of identity, a visible commitment to children and families. That matters. It matters to the families who live here now, and it matters to the families who may not choose our community to build their future because of the lack of resources available to their families. If we dismantle our local school, we are sending a clear message that this community is not worth investing in. From my professional experience, I know that local schools are often a primary lifeline for both children and their parents and guardians. Schools are where children's needs are noticed, where support begins, and where children and families build the relationships that help them thrive. When access is reduced and community connection is weakened, the harm is real, and it is most devastatingly felt by those with the fewest resources. Please consider our community's most vulnerable families. In just 3 days, over 140 people signed our petition to reverse this decision. That should make one thing clear. This community is paying attention, and this community is asking you to pause and reconsider. Please listen. Please think about my children, our community, and our future. Please do not move forward with a decision that risks lasting harm to our youngest learners and to Mount Vernon itself. We are asking for a better solution, and we believe one is possible. We are distributing copies of the petition, we already have, which includes a commentary from Mount Vernon residents. Thank you for your time, your service, and your consideration.
Next up is Sarah Tackett Nelson.
Hi, everybody. My kids went to school at Wayne. I worked here through the 2023 school year, 2022-2023 school year. I'd like to thank the board and the A-team for their time and the consideration that you guys put into making difficult decisions. As a former employee and a current special education teacher, I understand the difficult decisions that you guys make. And when I first read the Building Together or Building Stronger Together document, I was struck by a couple things. It's 17 pages. Families are busy. They don't have a lot of time to read a 17-page document that's written at the 10th or 11th grade level. They need information that's accessible and easy to digest. These issues are a problem for me because I feel like it didn't give families in Wayne and Mount Vernon a chance to communicate their questions and concerns. The following statements. Parents and community members are vital parts of our schools. Public participation and addressing concerns are core values. The board will improve communication with all stakeholders to ensure transparency, accessibility, and trust. Good communication between the school system and its citizens is crucial for the development of wholesome, mutual understanding, respect, and confidence. All of these statements come directly from district and board documents. When I take these statements of policies, values, goals, and guiding principles together, I cannot help but feel the district's handling of the kindergarten consolidation far from these marks. The process feels like the communities of Wayne and Mount Vernon were not taken into account. My expectation is that the district will do better moving forward. The communication on 3/27/26 doesn't make up for the lack of communication prior to the 3/11 meeting. To sum it up, as a Wayne resident, as a special education teacher, as a person who has been deeply invested in this community, I feel that trust has been breached and that priorities are skewed. When I look at the 5-year strategic plan, there are no less than 6 new lawnmowers, a new company truck, a new tractor, a new utility vehicle. It appears that our priorities are buying shiny new vehicles to the tune of $300,000 instead of paying the salaries of educators.
I'm going to ask that we refrain from clapping. This isn't a sporting event. This is a meeting where we're having a discussion. Thank you. I understand, but if you could wrap up, please. You're coming to the end of your time.
I have serious issues with where the priorities of this district are heading, and for the first time in my adult life, I'm considering voting against the school budget.
Next up is Hazel Stevenson, please.
Good evening. Hazel Stevenson, resident of Wayne. I'm also a select board member in Wayne. The school board decision to close kindergarten in Wayne this fall has created a lot of concern about Wayne's voice in this decision and the way Wayne has been treated by this school board. You've heard many residents express their concerns about the lack of communication and the process used to make your decision. The feedback to this board over several meetings now appears to have been ignored. Before you vote on the budget, please reconsider the request to follow due process and to revoke the decision to close Wayne's kindergarten before the strategic plan starts, let alone finishes. The issue will not go away if the budget is passed without a Wayne kindergarten. In my opinion, it will increase the distrust of the way this board reaches decisions, paving the way for difficult processes ahead. Please leave the Wayne Elementary School in the budget with a budget that includes all grades until you have completed a transparent, collaborative, strategic, and well-communicated planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Thompson?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Thompson. I am a resident of Wayne. I grew up in this community. I graduated from Maranacook in 2006. I actually met my husband in this building 25 years ago. Don't think I've been back since. I lived out of state for about 15 years. In 2020, my husband and I bought our home in Wayne. We proceeded to spend the last 5 years renovating it. We gutted it. And just 9 months ago, our daughter was born, and we're so excited to be back in the community where we both grew up. The thing is that I guess the reason why I'm here speaking tonight is because the community should be involved in this decision to move kindergarten out of Wayne and Mount Vernon. Those among us who are most impacted were not informed of what was going on until it feels like it's too late. And therefore, I'm here asking the board to please reconsider your decision and just allow the strategic planning process to happen. Allow the community to have a voice so that those of us who are impacted can participate. Our school is the center of our community, and what Wayne looks like in 5, 10, 20, 40 years is drastically different if we lose our elementary school. And it is just so important that everyone is given the opportunity to have their voice heard before major decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Holly Stevenson.
Good evening, Holly Stevenson, once again. I just want to say, in thinking about this, I feel that perhaps some of the board members may not have realized all the impact of their vote to consolidate kindergarten and close kindergarten in Wayne and Mount Vernon. Because by voting to do that, you also voted to take students from Wayne and Mount Vernon every succeeding year, gravely reducing the number of students in those schools. Your vote shocked parents, some of whom have been moved to already enroll their children in private schools this fall or to homeschool their students. So none of that is in the best interest of our district. And the 5-year plan, no, it has no value to us. We won't have any students in our school. They're being taken out one grade at a time. So no, that's not going to help us at all. And you can correct this. You can correct it tonight by making a motion. Anyone can make a motion to rescind the vote, closing the kindergartens. And I just respectfully ask that you respect the principles of the consolidation plan, which were meant to give you guidance. And please respect the citizens, the taxpayers, district families that are here tonight and at past meetings and on the petitions, who all want our kindergartners to be at our local schools this fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Susan Herman.
My name is Susan Herman, and I live in the town of Mount Vernon. I have previously spoken 2 weeks ago in opposition to the plan to eliminate pre-K and kindergarten in Mount Vernon and kindergarten in Wayne. And I'm not going to repeat my earlier comments, but will add a few new points. Since my earlier statement, I have learned that at the time the decision was made, there were 8 kindergarten and 2 pre-K students from Mount Vernon. Those classes could have been combined. We have a successful history of multi-age classes in Mount Vernon. And in my view, I'm not an educator, but in my view and experience, 10 is a legitimate class size for that age group. According to reports filed with the RSU, Reed Field currently has 2 classes of kindergarten of 7 students each. The so-called one-year plan states on page 9 that it never displaces a student from current school. That is inaccurate in my view. The 10 Mount Vernon students who had been planning to attend next year in Mount Vernon will be displaced to Reed Field. I count that as displacement number 1. According to the plan, in year 2, the original kindergarten students, who will then be first graders, will be displaced again by returning to Mount Vernon. That's displacement number 2. This ping-ponging of students back and forth is bad for students, and the negative impact was expressly recognized by Reed Field in its 2024-25 school construction application to the State Department of Education, where it is stated regarding pre-K that, quote, with the students currently going off-site for pre-K and then returning, this does not allow students to acclimate to the school and means they are constantly adjusting to a new environment. Maybe some or all of the Mount Vernon students who are displaced to Reed Field for kindergarten can prevail upon the administration to stay in Reedfield for the first grade. If that were to happen, Mount Vernon would not have a first grade in year 2 either, unless there were new Mount Vernon first graders, in which case they will likely be in a class so small that it will be found to be untenable. This plan sets Mount Vernon Elementary up to fail. I have also learned that in the applications for school construction submitted by all schools in the district for the 2024-25 rating period, that Reedfield's application specifically recognizes that there's not enough space. Specifically, in response to a question regarding kindergarten, the amount of space is rated by Reedfield as, quote, unacceptable, with a comment that lack of square footage for classroom space. This rating was well before the decisions in December of 2025 and March of 2026 relating to moving Mount Vernon's pre-K and K students to Reedfield. Moving Wayne and Mount Vernon pre-K students to Reedfield will only exacerbate Reedfield's space issues. Bottom line, it appears that Reedfield is already short of space. It is not in the best interest of the Mount Vernon students to be displaced to a school that already has space issues when the students could easily stay in Mount Vernon in a combined class setting until community input is allowed and the school closure process as set forth in the reorganization plan is followed.
Can you wrap up, please?
I got one more paragraph. In closing, this purported one-year plan is really a plan to close the elementary schools of Wayne and Mount Vernon over a period of 5 years. The plan to move the children next year only makes sense if the ultimate result is school closure. It makes no sense and is detrimental to the education and well-being of the students for them to move back and forth. Reedfield was straightforward in its 2024-25 school construction application about the plans for the future when it said, quote, the future plan is the creation of a consolidated elementary school, which necessarily means, in my view, the closure of both Mount Vernon and Wayne elementary schools. That is the predetermined outcome of the board's approval of the pre-K and kindergarten plans. I appreciate the board's service, and as I said previously, I've served on the prior school union board and local board and CSD board. I understand you have difficult decisions, but this is a really important decision for our communities, and in my view, it deserves a second look. I also respectfully request that the board disclose all budget impacts of the decisions related to kindergarten and pre-K so that interested parties can have the information necessary to reverse those budget impacts at the open budget meeting on May 13th in the event this board declines to reconsider and reverse its decision. Thank you.
That is everyone who signed up to speak.
I didn't sign up, Sean, but I love a minute.
All right.
So Sean and I know each other, and Karen, I read your nice letter, and I grew up in that little Wayne Elementary School. It gave me a big enough education that I was able to go on and do some other things in life. And I just want to remind the board, with great respect, with no politics, that our founding fathers at the Constitutional Convention, very distinguishing feature of the notes that Madison took, not once in the entire Constitutional Convention did they criticize each other for changing their mind, because the point was to do the right thing and to pursue truth. And I know all of you, no doubt, signed up for that purpose. The biggest repository you have of anything that matters to you in this job is the trust that the community reposes in you. When there are questions about that trust, when there are questions about due process, it casts a very long shadow. And I'll tell you, as someone who went to all the town meetings, all my growing up years, my mother taught 40 years in one of the towns around here, my sister teaches, my brother teaches, I've actually taught. I respect that you stepped up. But what I would ask you to do now is listen very closely to the hearts of the people that just spoke here. I know you do, and Sean, I hear you, look at your face, and I see you're listening, but listening with that principle that it is okay to change your mind and reconsider when the community that has vested its trust in you is hoping that you will not just listen to them, but listen and change your mind if that's the right thing to do, which I think it is. Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to move on to deliberations, follow-up, and decision-making. David, I think you told me you had something you wanted. Yeah, absolutely. I know you had texted me or called me.
Barged in before.
David Twitchell, yeah.
First, if it's the right time, I wanted to make a motion.
Speak into the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. First, if it's the right timing and I can be corrected, amazing how often I get things wrong. I'd like to make a motion that the board direct the Maranacook Schools Administration to recalculate the budget and related plan in order to continue the kindergarten classes in each of the 4 elementary schools for this coming year. And then I've got a couple of pages of comments related to it if you want. Go ahead.
It's in order. That's your motion, so you need a
That's the motion,
second.
but it may not go anywhere if it's not a second.
I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded. Now we're open to discussion.
Some of the comments I had, and hopefully I don't ramble too much, I wrote them down to try and keep it limited. One was on the responsibilities of the board and the administration. And I feel that the administration did very much what they were responsible for. They were given a budget amount directive from the board, and they thoughtfully, with their educational and management expertise, crafted a good plan to take care of the children and make a major cut in the budget as the board had asked them to. Where I have concern is that the board, which this part is appropriate, the board frequently refers to its responsibilities to the communities that elected us, particularly in items of keeping the budget under control. That was a huge part of the directive given to the administration when, because of sudden state cuts that left all of us with short notice, all of a sudden, we had a huge shortfall, and we directed the administration to try and come up with something quickly. And that contributed a great deal to less notice to everybody. The goals of the administration plan as presented appeared to me to be working toward how to make the classes in all the schools more balanced in size rather than tiny ones here and moderate or bigger ones there, for the sake of the children and the teachers, and cutting costs significantly as they were directed by the board. At our recent board meeting, the board listened to and then refused to adjust to a large amount of feedback from community members, and a number of you have addressed that today. And the community, as you've stated today, was saying that they felt that the needs of the families in the community were not being accounted for sufficiently. And I think the board certainly felt that the community members were to be listened to, and I think everybody here cares and did care. However, it was the present, I feel that the board fell down on not taking full account of the effect on the community. Because part of it is that we greatly respect the administration and for their careful planning. But they were responsible for the educational part of it. We were responsible for the community part of it. And so I feel that's where we fell down, and why I've made this motion. Not because the administration made a plan that was trying to undercut things, but because their plan was focused on the things they had been assigned. And I feel that we as a board did not follow through on the part that was more our duty than their duty. If we had responded then at the last meeting, or earlier, although it would have been hard earlier, it would have allowed more time for recalculation and adjusting, because we have requirements to have to come up with a budget for the voting and all that sort of stuff. It was said that the future planning, I've seen it all through, that the future planning could revert things back to 4 solid elementary schools with all the grades. That wasn't ruled out. That the strategic plan has that possibility. However, as some of you pointed out, what has been done with the pre-K and potentially with the kindergarten does sort of set in motion something that leads in that direction. For instance, just trying out ideas, the idea of, well, if there's a lot of kids in Reedfield, maybe some of them and their parents would voluntarily allow them to go to Wayne. That would mean more balance in classes between the 2 schools and more students in the classes in Wayne. The educators and the administration are much better at evaluating that than I am, but the response to that is that, well, the pre-K is already in Reedfield. Why disrupt them by moving them out of Reedfield back to Wayne for kindergarten? And that fits right in with, I don't think it was intended to do this, but it does, as many of you noted, and some were scared of, set in motion changes that lead very easily to the alternative put forward of gradually closing at least 2 of the elementary schools. And the motion I just made is not, I very much wanted to not direct our administration how to make it work. Whether it was mixed grades, where we throw in a ed tech or something, there are things that our educators know about the present systems that might not work as well as it used to. So the motion was intended to, although it's a high pressure situation, to allow the administration to come back to us and tell us how it could be done. And that's if the board passes my motion. And then follow through and allow, just as everybody wants a strategic plan, to plan it out so that whether we keep them all open or narrow them down or change the alignments, that all the schools in the district and all the people in the district have a say. And I'll try to not take too much longer. Towards the board, those present and coming tonight have been pretty thoughtful and clear. The 262 or more signatures on the petitions from the 2 towns are, to me, like 262 more people in here saying, we'd like this to be thought over more carefully. Taking into account things, the thoughtfulness was very much there, but taking into account, as you asked, the needs of the communities and the parents. As an aside, the Wayne School Committee is willing to propose to the Wayne Town Select people and community a request to help the district pay for the costs associated with reinstatement of the kindergarten to Wayne. We can't speak for Mount Vernon, but the committee has as I understand it from what we were briefed on, the authority to request of the town additional money that wouldn't be part of the school district budget, but that could be applied to helping the Wayne Elementary School, which our committee is responsible for, to meet needs. And it's been suggested, well, that could be extra books or something, but I did not see anything stated in what we were presented that said it couldn't be to help, whether it was help pay for an ed tech or a teacher or other needs. And the town and the townspeople certainly have the option in their votes on our school budget and any additional money requested through the committee and the town to say yes or no. And I'll leave you free of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion, comments, thoughts? Mr. Holman?
I want to, David, thank you for your thoughts. And I want to affirm also that I think what the A team brought together in the proposal makes a lot of sense, and I have voted for that. And I think by the numbers, there's a great deal to be said for that. However, we did not do as good a job as we should have as a school board in terms of a window of time for communication, people to absorb, and now as a consequence of that, we have a great deal of people in our community feeling unheard, unrepresented, and fearful on some level. I'm hearing something like Susan, Holly, that this is all a step and this is a slippery slope. I can tell you from having talked with really everyone here to some degree that that is not the intent. I truly don't believe that. I know for many of us it's very clearly not the intent. And we understand how the schools are the heart and soul of the community. As an educator, I spoke the other week saying I know that having balanced class sizes and teaching them to collaborate and a good critical mass is good for kids and good for teachers. And we're struggling with that now, having that. And I think that's a valid concern. But given how strongly the community is feeling right now, I'm feeling that we as a board, we risk running into a situation in which, for the first time ever, we may really be at risk of not having our budget passed. And it would be because we were maybe trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, but we didn't do a right process, and it can blow up. And I feel if the strategic committee group, which has some hard work to do, I think for that to be successful and have proper engagement with the community, I think we need to, I think we could make that very hard if so much of the community that feels they're not being listened to. So I am going to be supporting David's motion with hopefully not like a hand, with flexibility for the A team, if it goes, the A team, and particularly the budget committee, to look at, okay, how do we make this work? The drop in the medical costs, the insurance costs, provides a little wiggle room. And it doesn't mean that when we really look at it and we agree to that this year, that next year, if the numbers are there and right, we do it. We do it with communication. And the strategic committee is going and making it clear. I think we profoundly need, as a district, and the strategic committee is a good group to do it, to really find ways to enhance our listening and outreach and communication, and also to really like pull in more, more of those students that we've lost, find ways. And I don't think the decision we made, even though on paper and as an educator, I can see, yep, that makes sense. I think the externalities of it now, the effects are enough that I will vote to reconsider.
Is now time to ask a question about this? Yes.
Yeah, we're in discussion. Yeah, absolutely.
How much would it cost to add back the 2 teachers?
We won't add back the 2 teachers that we had discussed in the last, in the previous conversations, that the decision that the A team made was really about what was in the best interest of the education of students. There's so many pieces that are involved in this. It's not this simple one-to-one that it may on the surface seem like. There was a lot of variables that are presented in that whole entire thing. I think that we have an opportunity to potentially look at other things maybe, but we're not going to add the teacher positions back in.
Okay.
We won't increase the budget from where it stands.
Okay.
If we wouldn't recommend that to the board, is what we're.
Some of us are having trouble hearing. I apologize. Not able to hear what people are saying.
My question was, how much would it cost to add back the 2 positions? And Karen you answered my question. I wanted to say as a former teacher that moving toward multi-grade is a huge step for teachers. And you just can't drop it in a teacher's lap like that and expect them to pick it up. It may even be union stipulations.
Further?
Yeah, I have a
go ahead.
question.
Sorry, I
So
couldn't see
that
your
was
hand
my
up.
first question, that this decision was made due to class sizes, not budget. Right? It did have an effect on the budget, a positive effect monetarily, but it was made from the A team due to class sizes. And then also my other question is, this does not mean that the kindergarten is closing permanently at these schools. This is 1 year, right? This doesn't mean Mount Vernon and Wayne don't have, it's closed. That doesn't mean, right? Am I correct? Yeah. Okay, so next year, if
Yeah, it's been very clear that this was a 1-year plan, and then the strategic planning process would determine, as outlined and how that would be approached, that what the future would behold.
So if there's an influx next year, then they would be at Mount Vernon and Wayne, right? If we have the numbers.
It could be a variety of things.
Right. But I'm saying we're not closing, right? I know some of the verbiage that I've heard tonight is we are closing kindergarten at Wayne and Mount Vernon, which is.
That was not the intent.
Right, that's what I'm saying, okay. Permanently.
This isn't a back
That's
and
for a
forth
year.
debate.
Okay.
So please respect that.
Okay, and then my other question, question. Do we have a strategic plan? We don't, right? We do not have a strategic plan.
No, there's no strategic plan.
Nothing that has been shown is a plan. They have been examples, correct?
Just possible scenarios
Right,
with,
but we don't have a strategic plan. We are in the process of forming one, right?
the plan-to-plan committee, which we're gathering the information to be able to have our first meeting.
Yes.
And that will entail reviewing various consultant groups that we've reached out to get information on, so that the plan-to-plan committee can make that decision on which consultant group to work with to then move forward. The actual strategic planning committee and the steps of the actual strategic planning wouldn't probably happen until July, starting until July.
Okay, thank you.
There's a range of options. Mandy is working through what we have for example, some positions that weren't filled this year, and looking at, like the assistant superintendent was never filled, for example. And so where are some cost savings? We don't have that number. She's working on, so that the plan committee has an idea of what the ballpark is and what we can invest in for the strategic planning.
I think Principal Jacobs has her hand up online, maybe wants to add something.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I just wanted to comment. I know that many people have brought up the idea of multi-age, and so I just wanted to highlight some of my thoughts around that, because this is a question that we have taken very seriously. We know that multi-age has a real history in Wayne and small rural schools generally, and also understand why this feels like a natural solution, especially when so many of our townspeople have had experiences with it. But the way that we teach reading primarily has changed fundamentally, and I do believe that it has been for the better. We've done a tremendous amount of professional development across the district in all 4 of our elementary schools. But those changes in particular make multi-age groupings, especially at the youngest grades, genuinely difficult to do well. So we have a core program called CKLA, and it's built on a really specific scope and sequence. That means that children, what they're learning in kindergarten is deliberately designed to build on itself in first grade and in all the subsequent grades. And it's not really flexible in that knowledge and language piece that's really building on itself. And so in our K2 classrooms, there are actually 2 sessions. There's a foundational skills block that's 60 minutes, and there's a language block that is also 60 minutes, and that happens every single day. So that's 2 hours of structured literacy instruction that follows that very carefully ordered progression. So combining 2 grade levels in that structure, it does not create just scheduling complications. It means that some kids are getting instruction that's either ahead of where they are or behind, and neither of that serves kids well. And I think it was Pat who just mentioned that it is also a challenge for teachers. And so I think that's worth highlighting as well. This isn't a small thing, supporting 2 grade levels simultaneously with 2 different sets of standards, 2 different pacing guides, and 2 different sets of learning needs. It just adds significant weight to a teacher's daily work. And over the years, we've seen that kind of sustained pressure contribute to teacher turnover, particularly at our smaller schools. And so keeping our youngest learners, I believe, in a well-structured single grade classroom with strong, stable teachers, I think that that's really one of the most important things that we can do for their long-term success.
Thank you. Other board members? No, the public time for public comment has happened, and this is the time for the board to deliberate. I understand, but this is, Mr. Charles, I understand.
Thank you. That question of the mixed classes and whatever is why my motion did not mention that at all. That is, I feel, a decision that the administration would need to present back to the board as recommendation, because they are, as was just mentioned by the principal, they are aware of the latest challenges, the latest demands on the students and the teachers. So I have no problem with trusting the administration to come up with a plan that would deal with it, and I'm not willing to push them on, personally, the double grade or whatever. I would be fine if that's what they decide will work. But I want them to help us decide that, which is not to diminish the expertise of half of this audience and more expertise than I have, that's for sure. But rather just, to me, that's not the discussion right now. To me, the discussion is whether we're going to keep the kindergarten in those two elementary schools for one more year. I know it's hard. On the question of decision made because of class size is not budget, that may be, but that before the state hit us with that huge cut in what they would help the district with, there was no change in the kindergartens. There was no change in the principals, if I recall properly. Those changes all came when we asked for a severe change in the budget. So it may not have been because of the budget, but it certainly was initiated by that change. And I have had no problem with the idea that it is, as planned, as approved by the board, only a one-year change. But as was related to me regarding the pre-K, well, for that 1 year, they're going to be in Reedfield, so I am strongly expecting that come the next year, well, they're already in Reedfield, why disrupt them by sending them back to Wayne and Mount Vernon? Let's keep them in Reedfield. I really would rather that they were not disrupted in the first place and stayed where they are until the strategic plan makes a decision, which it may, that we need to change the alignments of the grades and where they are and stuff. I'm not pushing for it. I'm merely, that is what the strategic plan is for. And so as some of you said, I feel that especially if it really doesn't affect the budget that much, that this is jumping the gun. And it's not necessarily, it's potentially good for the students, but one more year for the students isn't necessarily going to be a huge damage, rather than jumping them back and forth between schools. Because we've had strategic plans before that proposed closing the elementary schools or changing that factor, and they have been resoundingly defeated by the communities. So if that were to happen again, we'd then be back, okay, your kindergartens are now going back to your first grade in your old school, Wayne and Mount Vernon. And so I feel the disruption is potentially worse by going ahead with moving them now and not necessarily helping the budget.
Thank you, Mr.
I have
Control.
another question.
Yeah, we have a
Sorry.
board member online that wasn't able to be here tonight, just joined, Andrew Gorel from Wayne, and he would like to speak, so go ahead. We can't hear you, Andrew.
Can't hear me at all?
Oh, we can hear you now. There you go. There you go.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I'll keep it short, but I just wanted to say that I do support, obviously I support David's motion. That's not a surprise. Um, just to make clear sort of for me what the decision lies on is that the key point here for me is community involvement, and simply that this was a decision which had clear stakeholders, the Wayne and Mount Vernon parents and students, and whether or not the best idea is to have the kindergarten stay in Wayne or have it move to Reedfield. Um, it's a big decision. Obviously, people care about it. That's why they're here tonight. And I think it would have served us, and I think we recognize now that it would have served us to do it with the same kind of notice and communication that we do with the budget itself. And the discussion around whether it's a good idea or not is essentially happening now after we have made the decision. I think we need to have that discussion. I think Jeanette made great points. A lot of people have strong opinions. But I don't think we can make that decision. We made the decision before having the discussion and not taking that input into account. And I just don't think that's right for the board to do. And so I think we can't just keep to our decision because it's the most convenient because we essentially forgot to get community input. I think we need to recognize that that community input is necessary and go through the process, even though it is slow and takes time, and have the discussion around really what is best, and then make that decision. And it will not satisfy everyone, certainly, but we need to have that discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Kristen, you can go ahead.
So I have another question for you, Karen. All of our pre-K students now, what schools are they at?
Reedfield in Manchester.
Okay. So I know that there are students, and these are numbers, and I don't know if you have them. I don't expect you to have them. But we do have people that are registered that didn't go to pre-K, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know how many pre-K students we have now? And how many would be new coming in kindergartners?
So I believe the list is, currently we have 30 pre-K.
Okay.
And I believe the total amount of kindergarten students for next year will land around 54.
Okay. So we would be, okay. Thank you.
Wendy, go ahead.
How many kindergartners are in Wayne and Mount Vernon for next year?
So for kindergarteners next year for Mount Vernon, I believe it is around, I think the list has 8 or 9, and Michelle can check right now. It looks like she's going on her laptop. And Wayne list, I think, has 4 right now.
Thank you.
Further discussion from board members?
As has been pointed out, oh, excuse me.
I'm sorry?
My hand is
Oh, Dan, go ahead. I didn't see you. I was looking at
If David's motion went, and it said go into the A team to look at, it could, it would then be the discretion of the A team and then coming to the board. If saying that the number you just said for Wayne was what? 4, which is a very low number. I know from the Wayne community, some members saying, no, there's more, to allow that, all right, that with the discretion, say like the minimum number is whatever that number might be, X, and below X, if we can't get to that. But that could be something that would still be within the discretion, it would always be in the discretion. Because it says that the district decides where students are allocated and staff anyway. So it can be done, but recognizing like if it really was 4, which I think a lot of the Wayne community thinks, no, it's going to be more, and I hope that's the case, and with good outreach, I think that's a credible thing. But also saying, no, you got to get a certain amount. So we would not, if that motion went and we changed the decision, it would still be up to the administration to say, we're going to do this, but like, there's got to be a number somewhere. So that's, I guess I'm asking a question, like that would still be within, as a superintendent and A team to say, the board made this vote, but we gotta have this amount, and if 4 doesn't work, but 8 does, that would be a decision that you could make, correct?
I'm not sure if I'm completely following you, but
Say, if we retract the decision, but David's motion, as I understood it, was giving, saying, and this goes to the administration to figure out, and they'll come back to the board, but it might be then going back and looking, here's the numbers. And finding out really what works and is right, and making sure it's communicated. If it's 4, let's, for goodness sakes, if it was less, if it was 2, I think it would be agreed, like, that's not a healthy size. So if this motion went, it would still go to the administration, and ultimately to the board, then to work out, like, okay, here's what we're gonna do next year. And we would have to come up with a plan that seems in the best interest of students in the community. So it wouldn't say, even if it's just one student, by goodness, you're gonna have a kindergarten there, you'd be going back and looking and seeing what's right. Correct? David, if your motion went, it's like, takes it back to administration, a team, and ultimately the board to look at, okay, what's the right thing to do? David, am I understanding your motion correctly?
What's the right thing to do to keep the kindergartens where they are? For instance, which is not something that might not work for many educational reasons or personal reasons for people. If there's only 2 children enrolled in Wayne for kindergarten, why not, if busing the Wayne children to Reed Field is not improbable or wrong, then how about if it's a little bit crowded at Reed Field, as was suggested as a possibility, which I'm not asserting, I'm merely bringing up, how about a few of them go to Wayne so that the Reed Field classes aren't as full and looking unbalanced compared to the Wayne classes where it's one-on-one almost, to bolster the Wayne classes rather than shutting down the kindergarten in Wayne or Mount Vernon. Although Mount Vernon seems like it's, because it's a larger community, has a better standing. So I would like a solution.
Leslie, go ahead.
Is there a deadline to enroll for kindergarten?
no, there's not a
Or just to make it through
deadline.
screening, like, because the organized process is to enroll and go through a screening process and.
Right, ideally, we like to obviously reach out to the community, which the administrative team did, starting in January, trying to get all the pre-K and kindergarten students registered for screening, so that we can make the best decisions, moving forward for the fall. And that's just standard how it's done in every district. But you can always have, families move in or enroll their students right up until the first day of school, or even after school starts. We sometimes get, parents that will enroll their students.
So from an organized process standpoint, like when are those screenings typically held?
So we started the screening earlier this year, again, to try to capture and be as most informed, especially regarding that we're taking on the CDS cohort students. And those are students coming from CDS that have IEPs that are 4-year-olds next year. And so we started that process sooner. So we've done the pre-K screenings already, which usually have done at the end of May or, in the month of May.
So let me just make sure I understand. You're saying pre-K's been done, but usually it would be done
In
by
May.
the end of, or in May?
By the end of May. We usually do a
Pre-K
couple.
and K?
Yes.
Okay. So, because I get that folks could move in at any time and need to enroll in school. And that could potentially be a game changer for any number of reasons, right? We can plan for some, we can't plan for others. We've planned special ed money around a scenario like that where a family or a child or student that needs high needs will then be covered and supported in the best way possible or that's required of us. So if there are students out there that are intending to go to kindergarten, but they're not a part of that number, I'm sort of wondering why. And it's no secret, sort of, I answered a lot of questions about this when I was gonna join the board. I live in Mount Vernon. My kids went to Reed Field. And not all of my kids went to pre-K in district. My first child went to pre-K in district. Pre-K for Mount Vernon was in Reed Field. So my child went to Reed Field. My other two children behind were going to childcare in Augusta that also supported through pre-K as an age group, and they were receiving services. So I let them continue there. That's what was best for them at the time. So they came into school, into kindergarten, and didn't start in district in pre-K, which is what I've heard other parents talk about is potentially their possibility too. When they did start in Reed Field, I was on a superintendent's agreement. My first child needed additional support, and it felt like the support that was being offered and fostered and built in Reed Field really worked for him. I asked if he could stay. I was told each year I'd need to send in a superintendent's agreement, and should there not be resident students that would displace by the right size of a class, my children could continue to attend. I was lucky that was able to work out. My kids followed Reed Field all the way through. I grew up in Manchester. I went to Manchester Elementary as well. I'm also a graduate of the school. I only know my story best. I only know my perspective from what we experienced best. And for my family, having done all of this still differently, it still worked really well for them. Their story, I feel like, is a successful story, that it worked out well. So that's what I have to work with, as well as trying to figure out how we plan. We need to start really firmly getting after the budget for the district with a lot of meetings in the committee starting in December. We held some at home remote because there was weather. So we start that pretty early, not right at the beginning of the school year, but not long in after we've settled some other things as the school year starts. So we get to a point where we have to have settled where the budget is, so next steps on planning can take place. We still have a town meeting that happens in April, which we would hear is before all the screenings maybe would have been done on a regular timeline, but then we have to send it to vote to all the citizens, which comes maybe in June. So if there are students that show between June and September, we can't plan what we don't know. We can only do the best we can to plan around what we know. And so I'm trying to understand where there's a different option to plan differently if all that we know that's available to us is what we've tried to plan around. And that includes the administration and staff and work that's been done to try and work that out based on how much our enrollment is going to decline starting even next year. As a whole, we're going to decline in students. And I think there's a lot of ideas that have come up, but we only have so much time to make each 1 year budget a plan and approval, and then try to move into the next year. So I don't know another way, because I hear everything everybody's saying and wanting to have good, lengthy, rich conversations and discussion and exploration around some of this. But there's only still so much time to move forward by 1 year, but compound on some of those conversations. That's what the strategic planning process can do. So we still are only here trying to determine how to get forward in 1 year based on losing almost $700,000 from the state which at some level makes some sense because enrollment will also decline. Not that that's that whole amount by any means, but I think that's part of how they're assessing some of that. So we move forward. Like, we can't ask them for more money than they're going to give us. They will not give us more money. So we have to try to be creative. I feel like that's what the A-team has done with the teachers and the staff and some of these families that actually are in support of what has happened or have even asked for it to happen. So it's a lot. There's a lot of input that does still come. It's tough to make a decision from a annual process standpoint that gets there quicker. If information continues to change, we still have to approve something at some point and move forward. And then make changes as we go. If something presents an issue, is that a fair assessment of the process? Should we get into the year and should we start the year however we start it, no matter what it was? Say it's a 4th grade class in Manchester that suddenly becomes over capacity of even 2 classes. What do we do, right? I assume we would have a process to try and discuss what that looks like outside, of our formal budget process. We try to figure out how to take care of what that issue is. I'm just wondering if we aren't in a similar place where we have only so much information. Certain decisions can get made, but not a lot of them can be made quickly. And we are only trying to figure out how to get through the next year. But the conversation starting now can keep going, especially with the strategic planning process. We don't have to lose what we're having for conversation at all. So I'm just saying it's tough to move if the data keeps moving. So if we have residents that have students that will be in kindergarten, sign them up and let them be part of the numbers. Or as parents, we still can make our own decisions, just as I had to make my own decisions for my family. Everybody can make whatever decision feels is best for them and ask questions about that.
Just a note on the enrollment decline. It was interesting to me, and I can be corrected, but the district as a whole has steadily dropped in enrollment, and all the schools, but that actually, if I recall rightly, Wayne had declined much slower than the others and even almost reached a plateau rather than expecting it to continue a decline. And except for reactions to the changes that have been proposed, I don't think we were necessarily going to decline much at all this year.
Starbuck?
Would you mind restating your motion, because it's been so long? I want to make sure that whatever we're voting on, I clearly understand, and then I'll have a follow-up, I think.
The motion, as I wrote it out, was to direct the Maranacook Schools Administration to recalculate the budget and related plan in order to continue the kindergarten classes in each of the 4 elementary schools for this coming year. Not going beyond the year, because the plan doesn't anyway. That's for the strategic plan to focus on. As you just said, we need to continue the conversation.
Okay, so structurally that happens, come back to the next meeting, then what? Like, so let's say, the way I see it, is a Boolean choice. We run the risk of not getting the budget approved by all these folks who have signed the petitions and are aggravated about the A-team's decision, guidance to the board, guidance through the superintendent to us to say, how do we solve these difficult budget problems? They present us with a solution. It seems in the best academic interest of the children, but politically, it's patently not, because folks are reading into this that this could be a slippery slope and that there may be no elementary school in my community at some point, and that whatever action results in a temporary suspension or a permanent suspension of kindergarten at either of these two schools is unpleasant because it could lead to something else, which I guess puts us in a weird space because no matter what we do, we as a board are then powerless to really do anything. If we say after a strategic plan that everybody goes through, we take a year and spend money on it, and that strategic plan says you need to eliminate kindergarten at these two schools. Will anybody vote for that? I mean, how do we know at the end of all that work whether the same amount of people are aggravated tonight about this temporary closure? We'll show up and say whatever the strategic plan says, we're on board with, right? So it puts me in a strange space in the long run. What's the function of the board? Are we listening to our educators and also our politicians and also our taxpayers who have to pay for all of this? Because we haven't seemed to have heard from any of them who are having a hard time meeting their tax payments. Today's tax day. It's not easy for people to make ends meet, and we need to be sensitive to that. We need to create a budget that educates children, that politically can get passed, but also isn't so expensive that I think someone mentioned that it's just wealthy people without kids living in our towns. So it's difficult. But thank you for restating that, and thank you for letting me kind of think out loud a bit. Appreciate it.
I think it's what we're going to do right now. The strategic plan may or may not come up with either direction. And yeah, whether people will vote for support the strategic plan that's a good question. But as a number of the people said, they want to be included in every step of that rather than some of it by default happening ahead of time, which is what this certainly looks like. I don't think it was intended as such. At least that's my belief and my respect and trust for all involved. But it certainly looks like it. And as you said with slippery slope, making those changes now really can encourage that slope, or it can just be, as I was trying to say before, more disruptive to the children because they get shifted for the educational reasons, but then they get shifted back because the strategic plan says no, or the voters say no, whatever. I'd rather make it work this year and come up with plans that everybody will, or as many as possible, will agree to, so that it's a slope that we've all agreed, or most of us agreed. You never can get everybody, but most of us have agreed this is where we need to go. So I'd like to, that's why I'd like to do this, is to take a step back, as has been asked, just for this year. It puts a huge pressure on the A team, on the board, because of having to approve the budget quickly. We're already at deadlines. But if all of a sudden, just as we did, all of a sudden the state hit us with this huge cut, and we and the A team fantastically made quick, carefully thought out, but quick decisions to change what was a completely different budget before we got hit with that. And so I'm asking the board and the A team to make another change so that we can move forward into the next year.
One question.
Mr. Joe?
So first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. Again, this is, I know, a very hot topic for everybody. I do want to just clear up a couple things, and I do want to ask a few questions. One of the things that I'd like to clear up, the state did not take away our money, okay? We got to stop saying the state. The calculations take away our money. We had towns that have reevaluated. Our valuations are up, which the way the state does their general purpose aid or their EPA, however you want to say it, that means the community pays more because the state's paying less because your community is worth more. That's how it is. And as we found out, we've had 2 communities have reevaluations in the last 2 years, and I think Manchester had one 3 or 4 years ago. So as our evaluations go up and others stay stagnant, they receive more funding than us. And I believe the new legislation that they are looking at passing, or they did pass, about readjusting it, doesn't favor us either. So there's that part of it. The other part is, I know everybody's anxiety over closing schools is very high. But correct me if I'm wrong, if the board votes for some reason in a strategic plan that is saying we want to shut down a school, and I'll use my school for an example, Manchester, that goes to the town to vote on. And if the town votes against it, the town picks up the tab for the school now. I believe that is the statute. I don't know if the consolidation plan trumps state statute. I don't know, and that's something that our lawyer could figure out that deals with that. But I'm just trying to clarify a few things. The other thing that I wish we would, as a community, start doing, because I had a conversation before I stepped into this position. It was open. I came in, and we were talking about schools, and school consolidation has been a hot topic for this board and our communities for many, many, many years. And one of the things that came up is I was talking against consolidation. I'm like, I don't like it. I think we should have our own schools. And then it came back to, then why doesn't the town fully fund their own elementary schools? Why is it shared by the RSU then? And it kind of clicked something in my brain, and it changed the way I started to think, is that all these schools are RSU 38. They may reside in a town, but when we talk about the elementary schools, we always say it's mine. I just said it's mine. And then it's the middle school is ours. The high school is ours. Well, why does that exclude the elementary school? And it's generally speaking because that's where we sent our kid to, and that's how we claim our ownership, is that's where it goes. I hope in the future that not only geographically we can start speaking a little bit differently when it comes to it, but I hope that in the future we start looking at our schools as not defined by town lines, but geographical location to our student. And like Leslie had mentioned that she lived in Mount Vernon, her kids went to Reedfield. It worked for her. And if I'm not mistaken, Reedfield was closer too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it happened to also be close.
But why is their designation to Mount Vernon? Because there's this line that cuts down through it that says that's where you go. So I'm hoping that comes out of it. But I will say that all these decisions that were made, this was heavy input from the administration team, and these administrators are in those schools too. And that's what I weighed heavy on, is I was trusting the professionals in that school to tell me what they believe is the right course of action. I will say that you have knocked me back a few steps, and I'm kind of on board with what Brian was saying is, who do we look to now? Because the board looked to the administration team, but we have 350 signatures that say otherwise. So I will say kudos to everybody that showed up tonight and everybody that signed these petitions, because it has made me second guess my thought. So.
Comments? Wendy?
Yeah, I
I would like to know if this is, if Dave's motion passes, what would that affect our timeline? What exactly will we be doing? I mean, because from my understanding, you don't want to change any of the money, or we're delaying
Wayne Town
things.
is willing to consider helping.
I don't understand what the next step would be for us. What would we truly be voting on? Not passing this to the next level. Is that correct? From this motion that David has put forth.
What are the options?
What are the options?
Yeah, I guess that's the million-dollar question.
Doesn't it put it?
Just a quick question. So we have motion 6D, move to approve the fiscal year 26-27 RSU 38 budget for 24.1 million. If David's amendment should pass, does that mean that we can't take that vote tonight? And if we can't take that vote tonight, how does that delay or otherwise impair any subsequent timelines that we have to meet to get things in front of voters and so on? That, I agree, I'm not fully sure what that means, because it feels like we can't simultaneously, let's say David's amendment passed. Does that mean that we can't take a vote on 6D, or can we still take a
Not
vote?
necessarily that doesn't mean that.
Not to put you
no.
on the spot, but.
No, I mean, what it means is if you, I am speaking in the mic, I don't know why it's not working. What it means is that we would have to take staff from somewhere else in the district
To meet that budget.
to meet that budget. Or, number two, that's one option, somewhere else in the district, there'd be 2 staff members. We would have to work to find either not fill, recalibrate, all the above, or it could be a second option. We could add in whatever that number is. I don't know. I've been told $100,000 a staff. I don't know what that number is off the top of my head. You can add that number in. We can increase. I've seen that done. We can increase that line. It would reset the whole timeline. We'd probably have to have a special board meeting and redraft stuff, but we can do that if we so choose.
I don't believe he's recognized. So can
Yes.
I follow up on that? Is that, so take a vote on David's motion. Does that mean, I guess, again, I'm sorry if this is simple, but
No.
do we then not vote on the budget tonight if his motion passes? And if we don't vote on the budget today, as I understand it, we just may have to have a special board meeting to continue to meet our time frame. Is that, am I paraphrasing that correctly?
That is correct. You can weigh in, but that is correct. Those are our options.
Okay.
I mean, we as a board set the budget. We have
Yep.
one main job. We have multiple jobs as a board. One is to set the budget. Others we can expel. The law is very clear what the role of the school board is. Yeah, go ahead.
So I might make a recommendation for David to reword his motion, because he's tied the budget vote in with his motion, and he does not need to do that, so that we can move forward with our budget process. The A team can go back to the drawing board if we have to, and yes, we will have to shift things around. We'll increase class sizes in other places, we'll do whatever we have to do. If that is the will of the board, we will make it work in whatever we have to do. But I would not recommend holding up the budget tonight. And then on the other end of that, I am just going to personally express my concern with not hearing from the taxpayers, the community members that might be voting the budget down because of the size of the budget. And we're not talking about that tonight. And so we can do all of these changes and then at referendum in June, have the budget voted down because we're not hearing from the people that can't afford this budget that we're even presenting right now.
So,
Mr. Turner.
so my, so
Mr.
my,
Turner, go ahead, please.
so my question then is, pass the amendment, then the A-team goes back, and they say, okay, we're gonna stay on budget, we're gonna make these other changes. Well, what if some of those other changes are deemed unpleasant by other folks who get their own petitions and show up the next week? So we've satisfied the Wayne and Mount Vernon concerns about pre-K, well done, but now we've got a problem because we don't have a Spanish class in the middle school or something, because this is what happened last year. So, again, I'm just trying to game this out. I'm not.
You are correct. It can go round and round. That's
then-
why
and then
being in these positions aren't easy. Being elected is not easy, because I hear from people every day with different concerns. I mean, I've done it before. I can go collect 300 signatures and say the budget's too high, the budget's too low. It's how you frame it. It's what you tell people. I mean, I've had multiple people call me and say the strategic plan, citing a strategic plan. There's no strategic plan. People called me adamant they were citing a strategic plan. Well, there's no strategic plan. It's outdated. So however you want to frame things, I listen to the select board meetings with information that is not 100% correct. Documents flying around on Facebook. You can rile people up. We live in the world of shock and awe politics. I live it every day. We can shock and awe someone called me and told me how I felt, like you did this in secret. No, we've been here. I wish more people would join these board meetings every night, every time. We sit here all fall long, all budget meeting, all budget long, until the budget process is a quick timeline that's advertised. No secrets were happening there, folks. No secrets were happening on the budget. Actually, people told me that they were told by their school about the kindergarten things happening. So a little bit of contradiction going on, but those are hard decisions. So the next group, you're 100% correct. The next group could come in and be all riled up and fill this room. You could go on and say they're gonna cut your kids' math classes or whatever you wanna make. It's our job here to represent, I've said it many times, the whole time I've been on the board, all the kids in RSU 38 and what is best for the district and what's best for all students. And I feel this budget is what's best for all students. I have a lot of trust in the A-team, a lot of trust in parents. I mean, we had a parent who said that my kid's class is too small. I want them to move to another school. And yeah, these decisions are tough. People are upset. There's been times I've been upset about decisions we made here. But I believe this is the best. I have total respect for the people who helped to make these decisions. And that's where we sit. So we can go round in circle if we want, but we have a decision to make.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Also, just to add on, because it's been brought up now that should our budget not be approved? And I think I said it a couple months ago now, then we end up in an unplanned, chaotic time of the budget being frozen to what it was in the previous year. That's what we're working through. And then decisions on how we spend that money continues to have to come back to the board to be approved. But by voting down a budget does not earmark a decision to change that will then make the budget be approved. Having a budget get turned down, having folks show up to a town meeting to shut it down puts us in a difficult place, no matter what the reason is. And at that point, even if there's a number of folks feeling similarly about what they want to have happen, that doesn't now make that happen. That's just not how the process works as I've understood it. So I just want to make sure we are saying that stuff out loud.
That is correct. What you're saying is if a budget gets shot down, I mean, I wouldn't advise it, but I've seen it happen in districts. They send the same, I saw it in a neighboring district. I saw it in, well, they just sent the same budget back. So there's no, you can do, I mean, it's not the best advice of the board not to listen.
Correct, correct. But what we have right now is a potential budget that we can plan around. And that allows staff to plan around and be comfortable with versus going the other direction where staff will then feel very insecure and very uncomfortable. And may then start to make new decisions, because that's what they would need to do, make decisions based on how they feel what's in their best interest, as parents need to do as well. But it becomes then something that is not executing in a very good plan. And even more people, I think, would be negatively impacted if that happened.
Thanks. I'm gonna go to Andrew. David, you're next.
No problem.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. I'm coming to you from China, so the internet might be a little funny. It's something I just wanted to clarify. It seems like we're muddling things a bit here. As Karen said very clearly, this is not a budget issue, and I agree that it doesn't need to be tied to the budget vote. And so so that means that if we did support David's motion to rescind the kindergarten removal, that it does not affect the budget. And so we don't need to bring up concerns about the budget being voted down because we decided not to remove the kindergartens. Removing the kindergartens is not a budget issue, and so whether or not we remove the kindergarten from Wayne, that should not affect whether the budget gets voted up or down. I mean, the budget may get voted down if people are upset, but that is a separate issue. As Karen has said, keeping kindergarten in Wayne will not raise the budget, or at least it doesn't have to. And another small note about the transparency of the process. I agree the budget process has been very transparent. And like I agree with Sean, it would be great to have more people at meetings in general. But for this issue, for the kindergarten removal, there was no opportunity for public comment. That item on the agenda was not clearly listed as a discussion of kindergarten removal. It was listed as the 2026-27 plan. I didn't know, even from the board packet, that we were going to be discussing kindergarten removal. And the public comment section happened to be for that item on the agenda. And so when I think we need to be clear that this wasn't a lack of community participation. It was a lack of opportunity, and I don't think that was ill-spirited on our part, but it was an oversight. And there was not a period of public comment before the announcement of the agenda item and the vote. And my last point was, well, I understand Sean's point that, yeah, I'm sure there are lots of people with other concerns in the community, and you can get people riled up about various issues. That argument is sort of a slippery slope to not listening to community input and feeling that the board knows best and the board is going to do what it does despite what anyone says. And I think we need to be careful not to go down that slippery slope and to take seriously when people take the time and effort to show up, to sign petitions, and to try to hear them. And yeah, and recognize that parents and community members are part of the process and do need to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I think, David, you're next.
Unless there's someone else, sure. Well, Karen put it very well, because my original motion did say to recalculate the budget. So I am, if my second agrees, I'm very comfortable with changing to direct the Marana Schools Administration to recalculate the district plan in order to continue the kindergarten classes in each of the 4 elementary schools for this coming year. Because I would love if we didn't have to throw the budget process into the grinder by having to recalculate the whole thing. And if, as I took it from Karen, that because of the skills of our A team and she, that they could come up with a plan that might be able to achieve the goal of the motion without messing with the budget, that would be great. And I would want the administration and the board to remember that the Wayne, at least, committee and town are very much willing, the committee is very much willing to propose to the town, and the town is willing to consider at least adjusting their budget to, just as has been talked about, pay for some of the Wayne costs that might be incurred by my motion.
Well, I think, like I had said, it's very complicated. I don't think Wayne is going to pay for a teacher at another school. So, right, so it's just very complicated. It's more complicated, and something's going to have to give. There's no, and it likely will, impact another area that other people or other situations might not look at as favorable. But I think trying to raise this budget at this point in the game is probably not in the best interest for us to do either.
Personally, I would be, on that part of the issue, fine with adjusting the budget a little bit. We have kept it very low despite the state in its calculations having reduced our part of the assistance. As we all know, because we are responsible about the budgets, and I feel we have, trying to keep them so that they support the students, but are responsible. We have passed every budget, even in some of our areas of the district, parts of towns, including Wayne, that are less willing to be comfortable with a budget. So if you feel that it's going to be some heavy cuts in some other areas to do it, it might be best to leave my motion as it was. I am fine going either way. But that leaves me not sure.
Nobody's being let go. I thought we were, the positions were from attrition, retirements, people taking other positions. So
Shuffling around.
So if we did this, this means we'd have to hire a position or overburden or underburden some areas.
It'll be shuffling around, exactly. If I don't recommend increasing the budget at this point in the game. We've been waiting and waiting for the health insurance to come in and have it come in lower. Like, we're on the final stretch here. I don't think it's in the best interest to go back and raise the budget.
So if my second is willing, I will change it to direct this Aranacott Schools Administration to recalculate the district plan in order to continue the kindergarten classes in each of 4 elementary schools. Is that okay?
Yeah, I will second.
Would
Go ahead.
it make sense, instead of directing, because the budget, I think everybody is saying that they don't want to change what the budget looks like. Would it be fair to say that, and if you'd be willing to amend it, instead of mandating that they go back and find ways to put that on, if we could just ask them to go back and revisit it and just lay out that plan. Revisit the plan. I'm not saying that we vote yes or no to put it in there, but I think that everybody is kind of in agreement, the budget's gonna be the budget, and I understand everybody's concern here, and I don't think, I'll be honest, I don't think that the A team is gonna come back with an idea that they didn't think of. But instead of mandating it, and maybe we just have them look at it. I don't know. It just seems like if we vote for it, it throws staff in a big kerfuffle, both at the A team and the education level. And if we vote to fund positions to do it, then it turns the budget into a big kerfuffle, and we're right back to square one. And I'm not really in favor of either one of those situations, but I think I would trust that the principals, the superintendent, if numbers change, if outlooks changed, that they would also change. Because I think that's how we got to this point, is they saw a problem. They came up with what they believed was the best solution. And I believe that if for some reason 15 new families moved into these communities and brought 2 kids per, and they were in pre and pre-K, that they'd go, okay, time to step back and reevaluate because that plan isn't working. But I believe also if I'm not mistaken, that even bringing in the kindergarten from Wayne and Mount Vernon into Reed Field, I believe the student population is still a negative loss for that. I think we're losing more kids than bringing in that next year. So the space issue, I don't think is that big of an issue.
There is not a space issue. There's not a space issue.
If we were to go back to the second draft, would that cover what we're going to lose if his amendment passes?
The second draft was the budget prior to getting the health insurance.
Right.
That's
Right.
the only.
But we saved $206,000. It's just an idea.
Oh, you mean the amount of the second?
Yeah. Just so we don't have to cut anything else.
Further discussion?
I think it needs to stay as it is, asking for the plan to be adjusted to arrange for the kindergartens, because that was the whole reason for, as has been called, the kerfluffle. And so the motion needs to include that.
What is that?
Read you. Can you just tell us the
Yeah,
exact
can you tell
motion,
us?
David?
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
And if the wording needs to be adjusted, let's talk about it. The motion is to direct the Maranacook Schools Administration to recalculate the district plan, doesn't say budget, in order to continue the kindergarten classes in each of the 4 elementary schools for this coming year.
So by recalculating the plan, we're sticking to the budget that we haven't passed. We're putting the cart before the horse here, but it means that we're just moving stuff around, taking teachers from other places to make these 8 and 4 classroom sizes. Okay.
That's correct, because
So-
there's no additional funds.
Right,
So you gotta
so,
work with the
okay,
funds you
yeah,
have.
fair. So in Manchester, I know there's one class that has 20 kids in it, one class. So, okay. All right, I just want to make that clear that we're not adding money, but we're taking from elsewhere. Okay,
So
As this motion stands, that's
Okay.
what we're doing.
yep, just wanted clarification. Thank you,
So
Sean.
then we're exactly where we are right now by having aggrieved parties. We'll say with no notice, you've eliminated some program that I cherish because we've shifted money here. Now we're moving other money to some other location that requires some diminishment. Is that a fair statement? Right? I mean, something's got to move and we won't even know what it is until the next meeting. And then other people say, well, wait a minute, we didn't have time to think about this. And, you need to have due process, you need to share this, and you're not being very communicative. We're back to where we started. And now time really is running out. So I just want to put that on the table so folks know it's not alarmist, it's just factual. So, that's correct, right? I mean.
Yeah, you are correct. Someone, somewhere. Correct. Mr. Horn?
The term recalculate, I believe you used, that allows a lot, Mr. Parker's idea or whatever, it would allow whatever. When we go back to, you said 4, that look to be there for the kindergarten for Wayne next year, if we changed it to directs them to the, retain the schools, but with the intent to, but then still within the judgment of the professionals, like if there was a class of 4, 3, 2, at some point saying, trust our superintendent to say like, no, that doesn't work, but also looking like, what can we move? Can we get, kids who are more adjacent, like Leslie's kids at different times? I'd like to give the discretion, the greatest discretion possible, but really the intent, and Brian, your point, the course is valid and everything is dear to some people, but in the level of dearness, the existence of an elementary school and how, these towns have had them since the 1800s, I think we had a good idea, again, a good idea for the right reasons, but we did not nail it process-wise. And I think this is part of potentially owning that. But I'm going to be supporting the motion, but I'd like it with the greatest flexibility for making sure we're trying to do the right things within that. So I guess I propose to change that, directing the administration to, with the intention of, in case the numbers come out just like they flat out don't work somewhere. And that's not nefarious. I just want the flexibility for the professionals involved to really look at like, how can we make this work right? I don't know how you feel about that, David.
I don't think it needs to change. I think if something like that happens, the administration could come to the board and ask for a change. But
that is true.
The present plan shut the kindergarten. I want this motion to open it, and I, as well as you, and all of us, I'm sure, would listen to the administration if they came back to us early in the year and said, this is not working. We would like to suggest A, B, or C as alternatives.
I think Andrew has his hand up again. Andrew, if you want to speak.
Thank you. In terms of the potential disruption, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. One, Wayne did not lose its kindergarten teacher. I mean, Wayne still has its kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Masita. I believe the plan is for her to start dealing with, become like sort of an she said she'd be dealing with behavioral issues at the school. I think maybe part of the idea there was to fill in for some of the time that Wayne will only now have a half-time principal. Basically, my point is that the disruption would not be that we have to take teachers from elsewhere to bring them back to Wayne. Wayne still has his kindergarten teacher. The idea was to, I believe, take Wayne's kindergarten teacher and move them somewhere else. So the in terms of disruption, what I would love to see is to know, my hope is that the administrative team could find a way to implement this with minimal disruption. Like I don't know precisely where the Wayne, I'm a little unclear what exactly the Wayne kindergarten teacher is going to be doing, but it was not my impression that she was going to be teaching a different class. So if it's as simple as putting her back in her position, great. Um, if not, then I think was Wendy's idea to potentially just keep the budget at the pre-healthcare savings idea is worth exploring because that is plenty of money to potentially fill whatever position um, was lost through attrition elsewhere. Um, but yeah, my main point is that we wouldn't necessarily be taking a teacher from elsewhere. It's that the Wayne kindergarten teacher will remain where she is and continue teaching kindergarten.
All right, any further discussion, I think? Seeing none? Andrew, were you good? Okay.
I'm good, yes, sorry.
Yeah, no, just want to make sure.
I just, when speaking of shuffling around, I just want to also make it clear that at Reed Field in Manchester, there's flexibility if there's a smaller class. So like at Manchester, there may be a smaller class cohort going through. And so they have it from, rather than two, they've gone down to one teacher at that grade level, and then it kind of follows with them. So the other two schools, it's not ideal because then you have a teacher working in isolation at a grade level. But that has been past practice at the two schools. If they get a smaller class size, that they can go down to one teacher, and that's been past practice. At Mount Vernon and Wayne, you have a small class size, we don't have that flexibility. And so that's where we are restricted as a district in making those decisions, because we're locked into the 4 schools, and that if there's a smaller cohort at either Mount Vernon or Wayne, we don't have that flexibility like we have at Reed Field in Manchester to adjust to those smaller sized cohorts. And so it makes it really challenging to be responsive to declining enrollments, or also just even smaller cohorts of students coming through. And so when you don't have the possibility to go from 2 to 1, and so that was what this thinking was, is, okay, we've got to come up with a configuration. There was no intent for long-term. It was just, how do we address this next coming school year? And how can we create an environment that the students can flourish and the teachers can flourish? So there will have to be some adjustments. And so on the flip side, it will be increasing the class sizes at the other 2 schools. And it will pose that the one thing about the entire district is that all the teachers are on the same contract. It doesn't matter which school they're in. They're all in the same contract, and they follow all the same guidelines. And it becomes a morale issue when there are teachers that the unevenness in class sizes and workloads, and it becomes a morale issue. And so I think, that is something that the district has also had to grapple with over the last several years, as another consequence of the declining enrollments, and that you can't have equitable, even kind of workloads amongst the teachers, because we can't do that with the 4 schools.
No, sir.
We haven't had a May 2nd election, I think, but it's not what the numbers say, there's only 4 kids from school from Wayne right now. But a lot of people haven't registered their kids yet, because they haven't until May 2nd to register. So, like he was saying, basically what I got out of him was that if the enrollment changes to 8 kids from Wayne, what does that do to the kid going to Reedfield? Then is Reedfield overcrowded?
No. Yeah, Reedfield is not overcrowded. It currently is around 160 students. 5 years ago, it was at 220 students.
But the kindergarten back, you know, it would be just like kindergarten. With the kindergarten back, you overloaded, if you had 8 from Wayne and then probably 8.
No, not the way that we had come up with a plan. No.
Any other discussion from the board? Comments, questions? All right, it's gonna be via roll call because we have Andrew online. So I'll call for the vote on this motion.
Right?
Yep.
Wendy?
No.
Kristen?
No.
David G?
No.
Chip?
No.
Dan?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Leslie?
No.
Patricia?
No.
Chad's absent. Sean?
No.
Brian?
Nope.
Andrew?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
I can't see that bar.
Yep.
So there are 4 in the voted yes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 voted no. The motion fails. All right, we will move on to vote on the 2026-2027 RSU 38 budget. Yup, third draft.
I thought the adult ed budget was part of the bigger budget. They're separate?
Yeah, it's in there, if you go behind here.
No, I know, but I just thought it was a line item, so I was just wondering if it was out of order, if it's its own thing.
It's its own thing. So
Okay.
this is, so this 6D
Yep.
is, and Amy,
Yep.
these are the 3 things that are 6D. 6E is adult. Ed.
Yep.
Okay. And then 6F is the overall.
No,
Oh, yeah,
my
it is.
D is not adult ed.
F is
I
no,
have-
6,
F is for E. E is the adult
yeah,
ed, got it.
6F is
Yep.
called the warrants.
Okay.
All right,
6E is adult.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
yeah. All right, so now we're on to D, vote on the 2026-2027 RSU 38 budget.
Is this motion 6D?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll read it. I move to approve the fiscal year 2026, 2027 RSU 38 budget, the amount of $24,156,583.86 as recommended.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, call for a vote. It'll be another voice vote because Andrew's online.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
David G.,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Noah,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Chad's not here, Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Andrew,
Abstain.
David T.
No.
So the motion prevails. All right. Vote on the 2026-2027 RSU 38 adult ed budget.
I move to approve the 2026-2027 RSU 38 adult education budget in the amount of $404,067 as recommended.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
David G.,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Noah,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
All right, motion prevails. Next up, vote to call and approve the warrants for the budget meeting and the validation referendum to authorize the notice of the amount adopted.
I move that the vote entitled "Vote to Call and Approve the Warrants for the Budget Meeting and the Validation Referendum and to Authorize the Notice of Amounts Adopted" be approved in forms presented to this meeting and a copy of said vote be included with the minutes of this meeting.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Can I just add, don't anybody leave until you sign every form I've asked you to sign, please? There's a lot to sign before you leave, board members. Thank you.
One quick question. With Andrew being not on site, how does he participate in that?
I just need a majority vote of the board to
Okay,
sign.
thank you.
All right, any discussion? Call for a roll call vote.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
David G.,
Yes.
Chip,
Yes.
Dan Holman,
Yes.
Noah,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Chad. Oh, sorry.
That's it.
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
David Twitchell.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. So don't go anywhere. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All right, thank you.
Okay, Mandy has